الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. After discussing the several details of the bridge party, today we're going into the tea party. We had two parties in the mosque section of the novel. We had the tea party, and we studied how failure it was, the several examples that we learned on the organization level, on the food level, on the communication and the language level. The bridge party was a fiasco, was a terrible party. It was not a bridge party. In fact, the name or the title bridge was ironic. I think we studied how the bridge word, or the word bridge, was ironic to the content, or in relation with the details and the procedures and the functions of the party. Bridge, it was not bridge. It was a further gap that it added between the Indians and the Anglo-Indians, right? The bridge party, we said, was a fiasco. I think we studied how ironic the word bridge was, because in fact it furthered the gap. It's supposed to bridge the gap because it's bridge. The name is bridge. But what happened exactly was it furthered the gap. All right? With the examples we studied last time. I said in the bridge party, Adila quested, got to be happen to know someone called Mr. Cyril Fielding. Remember the principal or the dean of the college? Adila quested can see that this man is different from the rest of the Anglo-Indians. In what way? In what way was he different? I think we studied that, right? We studied why and how he was different. Finally, we reached to the point when Adila questioned and Mrs. Moore failed to have a successful communication with the Indian guests, particularly the women who could not speak English. And because of the lack of the language, the communication had a setback or a barrier, a problem. So there was no successful communication. And thus they could not, Adila questioned and Mrs. Moore could not happen to know more about the Indians' traditions and the Indians' traditions, a set of traditions and customs. You have to remember the objective. Why Adila questioned and Mrs. Moore are in India. They want to know and to see real India. Remember that. They need to know and see real India. We discussed that, and we also discussed Mrs. Moore's last discussion with her son. Who's her son? Who is her son? Her son is called Mr. Ronnie Hislop. Do you hear me well? Ronnie Hislop. So she taunts him. She blames him. Why? He has been so arrogant, so a snob. She taunts him. She reacts to her son's arrogance because her son was is the magistrate of the city, and he thinks that he is much better than the Indian guests. That's why he behaved so arrogantly and so proudly. Who is there to stop him and to check him? It was the mother. The mother stops him and says, "Hey son, I raised you to be a good Christian. What's wrong with God is love?" She reminds him that God is love. We have to be a very friendly people, very friendly with those people, with the Indians. They are poor, they are disarmed, they are powerless, and they are kind. Why do you have to be like this? Of course, her son had a very stunning answer. He says, Indians love to have gods, and we British can pose like one. I'm just quote unquote. Quote unquote. This is exactly what her son says, how he replies to his mother's shock. Alright? Of course, Mrs. Moore is shocked to hear this from her son, whom she has raised to be a good Christian. We are past this, right? Today we're going to talk about the tea party. The tea party. Mr. Fielding, I think you still remember Mr. Fielding, the dean? Mr. Fielding wants to have a tea party, but this time he has not to invite 50 people. He has just to invite selected number of people. He invites Adila Quested, he invites Mrs. Moore, he invites no. He invites Aziz, because he also knows Aziz. He also knows Aziz. Who is Aziz? Aziz is the hero of our novel. This is the. Have you seen these pictures before? No. Well, this is the dinner. Remember the dinner? While Aziz, Amidullah, Mahmoud Ali are having dinner. Remember that? This is the opening scene. This is the opening scene of the novel. Well, this is the picture of our fellow, our hero. What's his name? Aziz. And this is when the two women usurp and take the Tonga. And this is the Tonga driver. Remember the Tonga driver? When the two women, Mrs. Turton, Mrs. Calendar, just jump onto the Tonga and ask the Tonga driver to go on to the club. Aziz is alone in the mosque. You've got to see these very funny and good pictures. Aziz is alone in the mosque. Have you seen that picture? This is the water pool of the mosque. Well, look at time. What time is it? It is night. Right? Right? Well, this is when Aziz escorts Mrs. Moore back to the British club. Is Aziz allowed to go in? Never. Aziz understands that he cannot go in. Who invites him in? The old lady. What's his name? What's her name? Mrs. Moore. She invites him in to go in, but he says, no. Mrs. Moore, it's clear that you don't know a lot about your world. Your British world does not accept me in. So just go in peacefully. I'll return. I'll go home. Well, this is what the bridge party. Look at the bridge party. British alone, Indians alone. There is a wall. Can you see the wall? Yeah, the wall separates the British from the Indian. For God's sake. For God's sake. Billah alaykum. Is this a bridge party? No, it can never be a bridge party. You see, the Indians are standing. They're not even offered chairs to sit on. All right? And the British people are having beautiful chairs and delicious tables. Tables which is full with what? Full with hot coffee, hot things, hot drinks, and delicious food. Is this fair? No. Is this the way we deal with our guests? Never. This is shameful. In fact, this is shameful. That's why we say that the name bridge is ironic. It's not supposed to be called a bridge party. It is anything except this word. Now, today we're going into the tea party. After this introduction, after this preface, we go into the tea party. Who organizes the tea party? It is the dean of the college. His name is Mr. Fielding. Mr. Fielding. He lives alone. It's clear. He is not married. He's single. In fact, he is a bachelorette or a bachelor. He's a bachelor, sorry, not bachelorette. He's a bachelor who is growing old without a family, without children. And where he lives in the guest house. The guest house of the college. No, the college is also the college or the faculty where he works has got a hostel or a dormitory, something for the for the staff members, staff members houses. guest house يسمونه ايش؟ الجيست هاوس. منزل ايش؟ الضيوف او الضيافه. لمين؟ It's only for the British staff members. لأعضاء هيئة التدريس مين؟ البريطانيين. So we sometimes call it the quarters. The quarters. For the tea party, Mr. Fielding, invites Dr. Aziz, Adil requested, Mrs. Moore, and a Hindus professor called Professor Goodbally. Professor Goodbally. Who is that? Goodbally is a character that we have to be familiar with. He is a professor, a philosopher, but he is not a Muslim. It's from the name. The name can tell that he is a Hindus. You're following me? He is a Hindus staff member. Where? Of the college. He's a staff member. So he and Mr. Fielding are colleagues. زملاء. Well, who is first to arrive at the tea party? At the party. Who is the first one to arrive? Can you see the picture? Yeah, our hero is the first one to arrive. Look at how beautiful the guest house is. There is a swimming pool, I think, out there. Trees are everywhere surrounding the house. Chairs and everything is fine. Everything is fine, all right? So, the Aziz is the first to arrive at the quarters or the guest house. While Fielding is still having what? A shower. Now, when Aziz arrives, Fielding was having what? A shower. Still having a bath. Well, after the shower, Fielding steps on his collar stud. Again, after he has his shower, Fielding mistakenly طبعا steps on his collar studs. What are collar studs? دعس على ايش؟ على الطقطق. تعرفون لما يكون هناك في ضغطة شديدة على الطقطق يصير ايش؟ يعني it is broken, right? And whenever it's broken, you cannot use them anyway, right? You're following? You cannot use them. So he breaks it. When he says that, Aziz realizes that he wants to he tells him, oh, I'm sorry, I just stepped on my collar stud. Aziz removes his own collar stud and offers it to Mr. Fielding. Look at the picture. The picture is Aziz removes his collar stud and offers the pair of studs to Mr. Fielding in a very significant scene that proves something. What is this scene to prove? طبعا Fielding appreciates it and takes the stud for himself, and of course he uses it. Now, what's the significance of the collar stud scene? أهمية اللي هو المشهد هذا اللي فيه إن عزيز is having a very easy relationship with the guy who has already, with Mr. Fielding who has already stepped on his collar stud, while Aziz just offers that to him. It's clear that it signifies something. It signifies how much simple and spontaneous is Aziz and Fielding's friendship. هذا يبرز شيئا ما انه كيف علاقة عزيز، صداقة عزيز بهذا الرجل اللي هو مستر فيلدينج، كيف هذه الصداقة يسموها spontaneous، تلقائية مش متكلفة. Right? Spontaneous and simple. Are you following? Well, and it is not founded, this relationship, this friendship is not founded on complicated manners and on perplexing decorum. The relationship between these two people, between Aziz and Fielding, is a very simple, spontaneous, occasional. It is not complicated. It does not require decorum and mannerism. What is mannerism? What is manners? What's manners? Here means يعني he means أصول يعني الأصول والإتيكيت تعرفون في بعض العلاقات يحكمها إيش يا أخوات؟ الأصول والإتيكيت, etiquettes and manners and decorum sometimes control our relationships with the people, all right? So here, this is the significance of the collar stud. This is what the novelist wanted when he projected this scene of the collar stud between Aziz and Mr. Fielding. Then what happens? Aziz removes his honor collar stud, said, and offers it to Mr. Fielding. Now, this is the tea party. The tea party. Look at the tea party. This is where they sit for the tea party. Mr. Fielding, Dr. Aziz, Adila Quested, Mrs. Moore, and the old Professor Gubbali. Can you see that man? He's there under the shade of the tree, sitting next to the sweet, Indian sweet. Even food is Indian, by the way. Even food is Indian. This is a tea party, all right? It's not a complicated, well-paid tea party. It's not lavished tea party. It's not a lavishing one. It is a simple tea party. There is a piece of cake, there is some Indian sweet, and prominently there has to be some tea, because it's supposed to be tea party, all right? Well, as you can see, it's simple, right? It's simple, it's gathering, it's friendly, and all the components of a successful party are available in this party. Shall we follow? Shall we go on? Well, in the tea party, explain the circumstances that end up Aziz into his invitations to the Marabar caves. Well, wait a minute, I've got to say that something is missing over here. Well, is it a successful party? Can you say it's a successful party? Yes. Unlike the bridge party, unlike what we read in the bridge party, here in this tea party, everything happens, all the functions and all the methods of the function, the procedures of the tea party were very much different from the bridge party. First of all, they sit at the same table. Let's look at this. They all sit at the same table, eat and drink from the same food and drink, right? Maybe except for the professor, who looks very much eccentric. And what's the language? What's the language they speak? All speak English. All right? So is English a barrier? Is the language a barrier? Is the language a setback, a problem, yani? No, the language is not a problem here. As you find it in the bridge party, the language between the Indians and the British is not a trouble. It's not a setback, because there is English. All speak English, right? Are you following? So they don't have a problem with the language here. So what about food? Food is equally available for all. Food in terms of tea, hot tea or something to eat, sweet or cakes or pieces of cake, is all available. All these are available for the guests. All right? There are no tables mapped for the British and tables mapped for the Indians. And both teams eat or drink separately on their separate tables. That's not the way of it in the tea party. All right? Following? Are you following? All right. In the tea party, Mrs. Moore and Adila Quested start a subject, a topic. they start to have a question about Indians' traditions of inviting guests. When Indians, now who is asking? Who's giving the question? Who's casting the questions? It's Adila and Mrs. Moore. They're talking to who? To the Indian Dr. Aziz and to the Indian Professor Goodbally. What is the question? The question is as follows. When Indians invite guests, particularly British guests or Anglo-Indian guests, do they normally show up for the party, or they just neglect it and forget about it? This is a serious question, because Dr. Aziz immediately asks, why did he ask the question? They say, in the bridge party, Adila questioned and Mrs. Moore confirmed that in the bridge party, they have known an Indian woman called Mrs. Bhattacharya. You don't have to be concerned with the name. It's a long and a very insignificant name, but I'm just telling it. The name of the lady is Mrs. Bhattacharya. Mrs. Raya, for short, has invited them to see her, or to invited them over in her house. On the appointed day, in the appointed time, Mrs. Bhattacharya never shows up. She never turns up. You got the point? You got the problem? You see, have you got the problem? Adila questioned and Mrs. Moore are confused about Indian women and an Indian woman who has invited them over in the bridge party. Remember? In the bridge party, there was an Indian woman who has invited them both to see her or to visit her in her house. But the problem is, the Indian woman never turns up on the appointed time. ما ظهرت. لأنه ما يعرفون بيتها، فاتفقوا على مكان معين to meet before she, escorts them to her house. But in the appointed place, at the appointed time, at the appointed place, the Indian woman never turns up. ما إيش؟ لم تظهر. طيب إذا ما ظهرتي ليش تعزمين? Why did he invite them in the first place? If you never intend to show up or to turn up, why did he have to invite them? So it's very crooked and very lame for Mrs. Moore and Adila question. And that's why they pop the question. Do Indians do that? طبعا Aziz has to respond to that. No. That's not the way of the Indians. This is not how Indians do. There must be something wrong. There must have been something wrong with the Indian lady who has invited you. But Indians are generous. Who is saying that? Who is defending the Indian culture? Aziz. He says, no, this is not the way of the Indians. But I'll have to offer a makeup party. Aziz has to offer a makeup party. It's there. The Arabic translation is there, right? It's a makeup party. Why? To make up for the lame, for the crooked, for the inappropriate invitation that you have had from the Indian lady. I'll make up for that. The Indian lady never turns out, then I have to turn up. I'll do better. But please, do not build a corrupted or a tarnished image of local Indians. This is why Aziz has to offer a makeup party. Why? Just not to allow the British visitors to build a tarnished or corrupted image of who? Of the local Indians. Of the local Indians. He did not want the British to build that tarnished image. Clear. It happens sometimes when we are embarrassed with our country fellow men abroad our country, abroad, off sea. When, sometimes we want to make up for a wrong misdeed that our country fellow man has done. So we just make it up. We make up for that. All right? Is that clear? Now, the problem is with the Aziz invitation. There's something wrong with Aziz invitation. في مشكلة، في هناك غلطة، في هناك نقطة ضعف بدعوة عزيز لمين؟ للحضور. For the attendance. For the attendance in the bridge party, in the tea party, something is wrong. Aziz has invited them to not to his house, but to the Marabar caves. What are the Marabar caves? They are a group of caves, some kilometers off the town of Chandrapur. Some kilometers off the town. They are beautiful caves, but something is wrong with these caves. What is it? Aziz has never been to the caves before. He has not seen the caves before. He has never been to the caves before, and that is his mistake. The problem is, it's clear that Aziz has invited his guests. Who are the guests? The guests are Adila Quested, Mrs. Moore, Mr. Fielding, and Professor Goodbally. Professor Goodbally. Are you following me? These are the guests. These are Aziz's guests to the Marabar cave. So it's clear that he has invited them to a place he has never been to before. He has never visited the caves. He has never been there. He has not gone there. So something is wrong with the invitation. What is the mistake? To invite people to a place you have never been to. Well, why did he have to do that? If he has never seen the caves before, then why did he have to do that? Well, Aziz thinks it is such a treat. It is such a special invitation to invite them to these tourist sites. The caves, the Marabar caves, is a tourist traditional Indian site. Site معناها مكان، موقع ايش يا اخوان؟ موقع سياحي. tourist site. ودعوة هؤلاء الناس اللي كانوا فعلا قد أعلنوا عن نيتهم to see real India. Mrs. Moore and Adila Quested want to see real India. So Aziz, made his mind up. Well, if they want to see real India, what's the point of inviting them to a little dirty house like mine, which is not taken care of by me, because he's a widower. Aziz is a widower. He's got no wife to take care of his house. All right, it's a little house which much look like a cottage, pieces of wood everywhere. So he would just give a special treat to his guests. He says, well, why don't I invite them to a better place, a tourist place, a site where the guest will learn a lot about the Indians' history, Indians' tradition, Indians' geographical site, which is Marabar caves. You following? So the problem is, the caves are full of are full of mysteries and muddles. أمور مبهمة وأمور غامضة. Who made this clear in the tea party? In fact, it was Professor Goodbally. Professor Goodbally asked Aziz, Aziz, do you know the caves? Aziz said, no, I have never been there. Professor Goodbally had just to ascertain that the caves are not what you think. The caves are mysterious. The caves are full of mysteries and muddle. You've got to be careful and watchful about that. How could you do that? How could you invite us to a place you have never been to? Well, Aziz says, well, what is mystery? They get involved into the definitions and the differences between muddles and mysteries. What are the differences between muddle and mystery? If you go and read the text, you'll find that they got absorbed into this discussion. It was a philosophical discussion. The differences between muddles and mysteries. اللي هو الفرق بين ايش؟ بين الغموض والإبهام. الأمور الغامضة والأمور المبهمة. في فرق بالعربية؟ بالعربية في فرق بين الأمور الغامضة والأمور المبهمة. Something muddle, something which is a muddle or something mystery. What is it? Who's speaking? Who? Go ahead. Good. Well, mysteries, yes, thank you. Yeah, it's pretty it. This is pretty the differences. Mysteries are easily decipherable. You can decipher the meaning. You can decipher a mystery. You can delve deep into the tangling problems of a mystery, and finally you can come out with a solution. You can unravel the mystery, but muddles are hard to decipher. Muddles are very hard to to give a solution. They are insolvable. Mysteries are solvable. Muddles are insolvable. غير قابل ان احنا ايش؟ يعني غير قابل ان احنا نحله. غموض غير قابل، او المبهم صعب ان احنا نفهم شيء مبهم. لكن الشيء الغامض ممكن نصل الى ممكن نصل الى حل له. Alright? You're following? لما نقول امر غامض دعني معناها احله، لكن امر مبهم you cannot read. It's unreachable and insolvable. You cannot solve the problem. All right? So they started to discuss the differences and the meanings and definitions of mysteries and muddles, and it's clear that Professor Gubli is hiding some information about the caves. He gives very incomplete statements and answers about the caves. When the rest of the Tea Party members ask him, he is not willing to share with the rest of the people these informations. He just wants them to go and experience them, because probably he even himself does not understand the answers to these questions. So there's something fishy about the caves. Aziz finds it no problematic to invite people to caves, because caves are caves. No, what could possibly be a danger of going into the caves? There's no problem. There's no harm or danger. And for Aziz, he underestimates the alarming statements of Professor Gubli. He underestimates all of these things. That's why he just ignores the notes and the remarks that Professor Gubli has given about how mysterious are the caves, and how the caves are full with muddles. We said umur mubhama. How to search the meaning? Impossible to solve. Here, see, insoluble means impossible to solve. It's impossible to solve a muddle. It's impossible to solve a muddle. While it is easy, it is handy, it is possible to solve a mystery, right? This is the major differences between what and what? Between a muddle and a mystery. Is that clear? All right. I think we should stop over here.